Hello everyone, and thank you for joining the Cyber Threats and How to Combat Them webinar. My name is Freya Evans and I'm the Commercial Agreement Specialist working with the Cybersecurity Services 3 dynamic purchasing system to ensure that buyers are able to procure cyber secure services through a compliant and assured route. I'm joined by my colleague Rebecca Gray, the Commercial Agreement Manager for the DPS. This webinar aims to walk you through top cyber attacks that we are noticing across the tech space and to give you some insight into what can happen if your systems are compromised and what services to look out for to ensure yourself and your organisation is secure. It's important to note that we are not technical experts and are part of the cyber commercial team at CCS, and it's always important that you have discussions with your cybersecurity managers, CISOs and cybersecurity teams. We do have a lot to cover in today's session, so if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat function. We have also added our emails to the slides, which we'll be sharing after this webinar. If we are unable to respond during the course of today's webinar, we will get back to you afterwards with a response to any of your queries. So this leads us to our first point. So what does an actual cyber attack look like? So sometimes when we imagine a cyber attack, we envisage a high-tech coding that takes over your system and renders you unable to use your device. However, this may go undetected by the individual, and hackers will find and exploit the weakness in your computer systems and or networks to gain access to steal your data. Here are some of the common cyber attacks and types of data breaches. So you can have identity theft, fraud, extortion, malware, stolen hardware such as laptops or mobile devices, denial of service, breach of access, password sniffing, system infiltration, website defacement, private and public web browser exploits, instant messaging abuse, and intellectual property or IP theft or unauthorized access. Pandemic-themed cyber attacks. So I think it's really worth noting pandemic-themed cyber attacks as McAfee released its new report, which is examining cyber criminal activity related to malware and the evolution of cyber threats in the third and fourth quarters of 2020. So in quarter four, there was an average of 648 threats per minute, which is an increase of 60 threats per minute, which is a whole 10% over quarter three. As organisations over the world adapted to the unprecedented numbers of employees working from home, cybercriminals were eager to launch a COVID-19 themed cyber attack on a workforce coping with pandemic restrictions and the potential vulnerabilities of remote device and bandwidth security. An example of the multiple opportunities for cybercriminals is malicious employees working from home with less supervision and fewer technical controls. They may be tempted to carry out fraud or other criminal activities. Cybercriminals recognise that the data security measures currently in place are not fit for purpose or sufficiently robust to prevent them from making successful cyber attacks. The activists or hacktivists, which is hackers fighting for social and political issues, are adding to the cybersecurity threats. And also junior hackers are testing out cyber attack packages on a variety of organisations and basically improving their skills. Since the start of the COVID-19 outbreak, hackers have capitalised on the pandemic. So knowing that there is a stream of uncertainty amongst organisations, hackers were able to use certain wordings and send links to panic individuals, therefore making the link more enticing to open and to also spread malware across the system within seconds. So here is an example of how these emails can look. So they are very convincing, so please be aware to not access links when you are unsure of the source. So why do attacks happen? Most often cyber attacks happen because criminals want your business's financial details, customers' financial details, for example, credit card data, your customers' or staff email addresses and login credentials. It's also worth noting that one way hackers profit from stolen data is selling it in masses to other criminals on the dark web. So these collections can include millions of records of stolen data. The buyers can then use this data for their own criminal purposes. So what are the types of cyber attacks? So we had the very common ransomware attacks. So this is where cyber criminals use a malicious software to block access to computer systems and threaten to release the organization's sensitive data unless the ransom is paid. So first reported ransomware attack was in 1980s, but has been an explosion in the growth of this in the last 3 years. So ransomware attackers can gain access to your system in a number of ways. So this is through denial of service, spear phishing, malware as a whole, vulnerable hardware or software, remote access, remote desktop protocol, and VPN vulnerabilities. On the 28th of April 2021, IT Governance published its first data breaches in cyber attacks quarterly review. It stated that cyber attacks were by far the most common type of security incident. So criminal hackers were most likely to breach organizations by exploiting system vulnerabilities, with 40% of attacks occurring this way. Phishing attacks were 22%, and the next most frequent form of cyber attack, followed by password breaches, is 19%. So phishing and spear phishing. So phishing is when a cyber attacker attempts to trick the user into clicking a bad link that will either download malware or direct the user to a dodgy website. They can be carried out by text, social media, or by phone, and they rely on busy employees and a lack of cyber awareness. There's also spear phishing, which is a more targeted attack where they will use information about the employee or organization to make the messages more authentic or persuasive. You may receive a message from a member of your organization. Phishing is commonly used to describe those sent via email, so often sent in volume. So you'll be able to see inaccuracies alongside spelling mistakes. So the email addresses is also a good indication. There has been an increase in smishing scams, such as the recent DPD one, and many of you will have received smishing texts, phone fraud, and phone in general, phone fraud is also increasing. There's also denial of service, or better known as DOS. So DOS can also affect industrial control systems. They vary in length of time, and it can also target more than one site or system. So Black Friday is an example of a legitimate DOS due to the overload that browsing can create. However, a DOS attack usually happens without a warning. So malware. So what is malware in particular? So malware is short for malicious software. This refers to any intrusive software developed by cybercriminals to steal data and damage or destroy computers and computer systems. Examples of common malware include viruses, worms, Trojan viruses, spyware, adware, and ransomware. Recent malware attacks have extra-filtered data in mass amounts. I think it's also really worth noting AI attacks. So as systems are becoming more intelligent, there opens the possibility for systems to communicate with one another. So what does an AI-powered cyber attack look like? It's important to anticipate a future software program smart enough to understand how to analyze all possible vectors of an attack. They will then select the best option, execute successfully, and remain undetected. And potentially these programs can be aimed at your organization. So an algorithm-driven cyber attack program will also run non-stop 24/7, critically thinking about how to attack. But most importantly, it can evolve to avoid being detected. These programs, for example, could be smart enough to figure out every single employee who works or has ever worked for your company. Perhaps by trawling through LinkedIn data, it could then attack each one of their home networks and lie in wait for one of them to connect to the corporate network. Now that you are aware of what kind of attacks can happen, it's also important to understand the stages of a cyber attack. So all cyber attacks, whether targeted or untargeted, have a number of stages in common. So there is survey, which is investigating and analysing available information about the target in order to identify potential vulnerabilities. There's the delivery, which is getting to the point in the system where a vulnerability can be exploited. There's then the breach, which is exploiting the vulnerability or vulnerabilities to gain some form of unauthorized access. And lastly, effect. So that's carrying out activities within a system that achieve the attacker's goal. For more information, you can visit this website by NCSC. Having an understanding of the stages can help you implement better defenses and will ensure you incorporate a defense in-depth strategy. So cyber attack case studies. NHS WannaCry. So I'm sure you are aware of the infamous attack on the NHS in 2017 on May 12th. The WannaCry ransomware began affecting dozens of NHS facilities. Eventually, more than 60 NHS trusts were hit. Many facilities could not access patient records, which led to delays of non-urgent surgeries and cancelled patient appointments. Some hospitals had to divert ambulances to other facilities, and this attack cost the NHS a staggering £92 million. Since hitting the NHS on May 12th, the WannaCry ransomware has spread rapidly, affecting many businesses around the world, including the shipping company FedEx. The virus is downloaded to a computer when a user clicks a link in an email or opens an attachment. Files on the computer are then encrypted and can only be unlocked if the user pays a ransom fee. There was also the Amazon Web Services, which was the DDoS. So Amazon Web Services, which is the subsidiary of Amazon, was hit by a massive DDoS attack in February 2020. This was the most extreme attack in recent history, which was targeting an unidentified AWS customer. The hackers used a technique called Connectionless Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, which is CLDAP reflection. It's a bit of a mouthful. This technique relies on third-party CLDAP servers and amplifies the amount of data sent to the victim's IP address by 56 to 70 times. The attack lasted 3 days and peaked at an astounding 2.3 terabytes per second. So just to put this into perspective, 1 terabyte equals 1,000 gigabytes or 1 million megabytes. So pretty huge. There's also supply chain attacks. So a software supply chain attack occurs when a cyber threat actor infiltrates a software vendor's network and employs malicious code to compromise the software before the vendor sends it to their customers. The compromised software then compromises the customer's data or system. So how can the procurement process help to mitigate this risk? So accreditation from suppliers is important to ensure that the supplier has an understanding and competence in cybersecurity. Cyber Essentials is a government-backed scheme that allows organisations to carry out a cyber self-assessment and provides an understanding of the organisation's security levels. This will mean that your supplier has taken steps to safeguard their business against cyber threats. A further step would also be to request Cyber Essentials Plus, which offers additional protections as it includes a technical audit of supplier systems. Just to note, all suppliers on the Cybersecurity Services 3 DPS have Cyber Essentials as a minimum, and you can select other accreditations such as Cyber Essentials Plus within the filters. This brings me to the National Cybersecurity Centre. So at CCS, we pride ourselves in our collaboration with NCSC to assure that we are able to provide the best standard level of cyber security services within the National Cybersecurity Centre accreditation. Launched in October 2016, the NCSC has headquarters in London and brought together expertise from CESG, which is the information assurance arm of GCHQ, the Centre for Cyber Assessment, CERT UK, and the Centre for Protection of National Infrastructure. The NCSC support the most critical organisations in the UK, the wider public sector industries, SMEs, as well as the general public. When incidents do occur, they provide effective incident response to minimise harm to the UK, help with recovery, and then learn lessons for the future. Please see this link to the NCSC website to find out more on how to report a cybersecurity incident. So benefits of buying NCSC assured services are the supplier has demonstrated that it has defined process for working with customers to understand their needs and to tailor advice accordingly. They have demonstrated a clear understanding of current and potential cyber threats and techniques and potential effective mitigations. They've then demonstrated that it acts with integrity, objectivity, and proportionality. It protects the client's confidentiality and integrity and complies with relevant laws and regulation. They then seek to continuously improve the services offered to meet the evolving needs of the customer. And yes, we will be sending out these slides after this session, so you'll be able to access all of these links on here. Here are some also more useful links to NCSC guidance. As stated, this will be sent out afterwards, so you'll be able to have access to all of these. So a bit more cyber insight. So ransom, should you pay? Law enforcement do not endorse, encourage or condone the payment of any ransom demands. So considerations to make are as follows. If you do pay, there is still no guarantee that you will regain access to your data or computer. Your computer will still be infected. The payment will go to criminal groups and you will likely become a target in the future. So organizations in this case should adopt a defense in depth approach. So what is defense in depth? Defense in depth, or DID, is an approach to cybersecurity in which a series of defensive mechanisms are layered in order to protect valuable data and information. If one mechanism falls, another steps up immediately to thwart an attack. This is where a defense in depth architecture comes into play. The first line of defense when securing a network is the analysis of network traffic. So firewalls prevent access to and from unauthorized networks and will allow or block traffic based on a set of security rules. Intrusion protection systems often work in tandem with a firewall to identify potential security threats and respond to them quickly. So if you'd like to learn more about the network security, you can also visit our What is Network Security page. So how to combat threats? So there's regular backup. So a backup is a copy of the system or network's data for file restoration or archival purposes. Backups are an essential part of a continuity of operations plans as they allow for data protection and recovery. So firstly, you should identify what you need to back up. So what essential data do you hold? You also want to keep your backups separate from your computer and make sure that they are not accessible by staff and are not permanently connected to the device holding the original copy. You should also consider cloud storage physically separate from your location and consider how much data you need to back up and how frequently. How quickly will you need to access data in the event of an attack? You should also test your systems. So cybersecurity testing uses multiple methodologies and tactics to measure how effective your cybersecurity strategy is against a potential attack. It identifies critical vulnerabilities that are being actively used in the industry to launch cyber attacks. So there's penetration testing and IT health checks are key tools in analyzing the security of your IT systems. Penetration testing will use the same techniques as an adversary will attempt to breach your system and identify any vulnerabilities. An IT health check also will test external and internal systems to provide assurance that they are protected from unauthorized access or change. So what is penetration testing? So penetration testing, also known as pen testing or security pen testing and security testing, is a form of ethical hacking. So the pen test attempts to pierce the armor, basically, of an organization's cyber defenses, checking for exploitable vulnerabilities in networks, web apps, and user security. Here are the 7 steps and phases of penetration testing, which is information gathering, reconnaissance, discovery and scanning, vulnerability assessment, exploitation, final analysis and review, and then they will utilize the testing results. Another way to secure your organization's cyber posture is to develop your incident response plan. So a thorough and detailed incident response plan is crucial to resilience, and this will ensure that your organisation can recover quickly from any attack. This will include key contacts, escalation criteria, and a process to make critical decisions, flowchart covering the full incident lifecycle and categorization, communications plan, guidance, legal and regulatory requirements, a checklist to use in an emergency. It's also forms to document and track the incident, technical guidance on containing, analysing, remediating and recovering, playbooks guidance and an incident response team. So that's detailing their roles and responsibilities. It's also important to educate your employees. So keeping employees aware of the latest threat intelligence and attack methods will help mitigate the anxiety caused by cybersecurity uncertainty. In addition to reducing stress, security training will help eliminate risky behaviour and instill security company-wide best practices. You can also develop your BCDR plan. BCDR, or Business Continuity Disaster Recovery Plan, is crucial to ensure that your data will be secure in the unfortunate event of an attack. So make sure a copy is stored offline so it's accessible in the event of an attack. It should include a complete approach to keeping your team productive during planned or unplanned disruptions such as a cyber attack. It also detail emergency contacts, any key staff and responsibilities, be incorporated into the incident response plan yourself, emergency communications, and this can also include risk analysis, disaster recovery scenarios and procedures that will be regularly reviewed and maintained. Keep up to date with emerging threats. As new advanced threats are being discovered daily, the detection of threats is also important in increasing both your understanding of the threat landscape and the threat intelligence. So taking a proactive approach to cybersecurity is essential in ensuring that your organisations are aware of threats to allow for methods to be adjusted before they affect your services. As threats continue to increase in frequency and sophistication, so must our knowledge and preventative measures. There's also further guidance on mitigating malware and ransomware attacks here also. So now that you know about the cyber threats and how to actually combat them, what to buy for your organisation. So the following is the services that we provide through the Cybersecurity Services 3 dynamic purchasing system. So the way that this works on a dynamic purchasing system is that you are offered a list of different filters that you can go through. So if you're looking for consultancy and advice for your organisation, this can include a cyber essentials certification, cyber awareness training. It can develop a security strategy, analyse the risks within your supply chain. If you're then looking for penetration testing, you're looking for a method of testing your systems for vulnerabilities and identifying risks, and getting that assurance that your systems are protected from any other vulnerabilities. We then have incident response and data destruction, which again is very important if you have been attacked. So what is coming next in cyber at CCS? So as businesses are becoming more aware of the emerging threats, at Crown Commercial Service, we aim to be at the forefront of being able to offer compliant and assured routes to purchasing cybersecurity services. As the Cybersecurity Services 3 agreement is a dynamic purchasing system, this also means that the scope is flexible, which enables us to issue new services to the DPS, which we feel are suitable in the current market. So security operations centres will soon be added to the scope of the agreement. This includes dedicated or internal SOCs, which is the enterprise sets up its own cybersecurity team within its workforce. You've also got a virtual SOC where the security team does not have a dedicated facility and often works remotely. You've got global or command SOC, which is a high-level group that oversees smaller SOCs across a large region, or a co-managed SOC, which is the enterprise's internal IT, which is very tightly coupled with an outsourced vendor to manage cybersecurity needs jointly. If you would like to know more about our services or the SOCs, please contact a member of the cyber category. Now we will play for you a short 5-minute step-by-step guide on how to use the Cybersecurity Services 3 DPS.